Yeah, this is Ann. Could I ask a question?
Yes.
Why are you after a normal distribution? Wouldn't you expect that with the basic underlying data about stream crossings, that variable would be relevant for only a few roads?
Well, so we want the normalization because in this scenario, what you're looking at right now, we actually took each of those data sets and I have multiplied their value by 0.33 and then summed them so that our range could be between 0 and 1. And we don't want stream crossings in that scenario to get overwhelmed by others that do have a range between 0 and 1, that do have a distribution between 0 and 1. And stream crossing, if its most common value is a 0.001, but we do think stream crossings are incredibly important, we want it to be on the same sort of playing field as soil erosion. John can potentially jump in and give a more scientific explanation.
Well, it's not more scientific, but see, one of the things we were going to do today is to show this on ArcGIS, but the ArcGIS server is not working very well. But so, Ann, you can imagine. Hopefully, maybe a few weeks ago you saw the ArcGIS data that went along with this. So,
yep.
You have all these road segments. So imagine zooming into a section of the forest where you have some road segments, and some of them cross the creeks. There's one segment, say, that actually crosses the creek 5 times, and it's causing all sorts of problems with erosion and and connectivity for the fish, and so it's a major drag. And then also in that same little section of forest, you got a whole bunch of other road segments that don't cross the stream at all, but they have soils that cause erosion, and so they're problematic as well. What was happening is, if we didn't do this normalization, what was happening is that the stream crossing criteria got completely washed out when you did a weighted sum, because of that really skewed histogram that Jen showed in the beginning, with the mean value being over at 0.01.
Isn't it appropriate for the roads without any street, or with very few stream crossings, to be sort of washed out in the index because it's not an important factor for those road segments?
Right. Those were getting washed out, but even the roads that did have a lot of stream crossings were getting overlooked and not given a very good value. So, in other words, there's like 3,000 road segments on the forest, and I think that there was something like only
there's about 26. I think I can try and get at this, Ann. There's about 2,600 roads on the forest, and only about 400 of them, road segments on the forest, only about 400 of them actually cross streams, which is okay. If they don't cross a stream, that's great. But part of the problem with this really low distribution of stream crossings is that when we summarize by line, summarize to the line from this raster environment, every line in, say, every cell in soil erosion has a value. So every cell along the landscape has some value between 0 and 0.36. So its average, when it's summarized by this line segment, is a value for the most part, and it's a decent sized value. But in the stream crossing scenario, we have zeros and ones, and these ones are incredibly rare. So when we do summarize, it just becomes a 0.0001 scenario, because you may have 100 cells that have a 0 value, but 5 cells that have a 1 value, which is actually really significant. Those 5 stream crossings are significant.
Right. So what was happening is that, say on the forest, there's one road that actually crosses the stream 10 times. No, actually, let's say it crossed 40 times. That road was getting a value of 1 in our, once you normalize things. But then these roads that cross 5 times we're getting a value way down low, like at 0.07 or something like that. And yet 5 times is a pretty significant amount of crossing. But when you compare that to the soil erosion data, a 0.07 on the soil erosion data was a road that's not important at all.
Okay.
And so a 0.07 on the stream crossing data was a pretty significant result, but a 0.07 on the stream erosion, on the soil erosion was insignificant. And so when you add those two layers together in a weighted sum, and you're saying, okay, I think both of these issues are equally important. I want to give them each a weight of 0.5. Then you weren't in actuality doing that. You were just giving a much bigger influence to the soil erosion layer.
Yeah, this kind of gets back, I think, to John suggested. I don't know how to say his name. Is it Belak? Suggested actually doing some quantitative modeling of soil erosion, and I think kind of what I'm getting to is that the best way to build an index would be to actually look at quantitative estimates of soil erosion from each of these factors and use that to build the index. But you don't have that, and so you're kind of trying to patch something together for lack of that quantitative information that still reflects relative importance.
Right. So what you're saying is combine stream crossing and soil KW factor in a different type of formula rather than a weighted sum.
Yeah, which is based on actual quantitative estimates of how important each factor is in the quantity of soil erosion, but we don't have that, so you have to do the best you can, which that makes sense.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the zeros aren't the problem. It's the high number that skews the distribution. That's the problem. The zeros reflect reality on the ground, but when you use the high number to normalize the rest of them, that's skewing. Okay.
Exactly. If you have an outlier, on the high end, that outlier then becomes 1, and then all the other things get skewed way down to 0.07, 0.01, that area.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
One of me and John's questions yesterday afternoon, I think, was why are we applying these two different types of normalizations, and how can we avoid it? And you know, honestly, last night I had a dumb moment. I don't know how it took us this long to think of this, but what I would like to test next, and I think should work, is to simply use this mid-value mean solution without the maximum score beforehand, where we just set the minimum to a 0, the maximum to 1, and use the mean as a 0.5. So I don't have results for that. I was hoping to come in early today and test it, but as I said, I can't log into ArcGIS. So, but I think that's going to be the next test. I haven't even run this by John yet. But.
Oh, that sounds like a really good idea.
But Jen, if you're defining that skewed really high value as 1, and in actuality, stream crossings are much more important than soil erodibility, then you've also underestimated the importance of stream crossings just by setting a 0 to 1 value, right? If you're using an equal weight in your sum.
Well, that's the key right there. Well, I'm sorry, Jen, what was your answer going to be?
I was actually going to say that we know what the result of a stream crossing scenario would be. So what you're looking at down here in the bottom right corner, with the peak at 0.5 or just above 0.5, that's what the distribution of stream crossings would be, because the maximum score normalization had no effect on it. So we'd only be applying this mid-value mean.
And then also, in addition, and what you said right there is you made a big value judgment. You said, but we think stream crossings are much more important than the soil type and soil erodibility, and so they're not getting as. But if you normalize them with a maximum value of 1 and then give them equal weight, then they're not going to get that extra value. So when you have a value judgment like that, that's the time when you actually give it a higher weight. That's when you give it a weight of 0.75 and the other one a weight of 0.25, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
So, but then at least you know that when you're changing those weights around, that you're going to have that influence on the different layers. You know.
Yeah, I guess I'm still uncomfortable with forcing the mean to be the middle of the distribution if that's not really the case on the ground.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I could see the counter to it. So say in our case there was a road segment that had a stream crossing. What did I say? 20 stream crossings in the one segment. You know, it's just all over the road, all over the stream, or more or less driving through the stream. That one. If we don't do this normalization, that one will be that road segment will be as important as the road segment out there that has the highest soil erodibility. You know, if they're equal weighted.
Yeah, and the road segments that maybe all the rest of the roads have only one stream crossing. But
right.
Maybe that's appropriate for them to have a much lower value because every stream crossing, you know, has erosion proportional to the number of crossings. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess I don't know why you're quite so worried about the shape of the distribution as opposed to the weight that each factor gets in the end result.
You know, there's one other data set that we're using here that I've, for simplicity, left out, and I wonder if it would elucidate the situation more for you. So let me go back to the beginning. So in this summary by line, we have soil erosion, stream crossing. There's actually a third that we're calling isolation. And I'm running off the top of my head, but the maximum for this is a 0.42, I think. So stream crossing is pretty rare for us to be between 0 and 1. So I didn't quite understand the normalization either, Ann, and I'm still wrapping my head around it a little bit and coming to grips with why we're doing it. But for me, a real selling point is that we want soil erosion and this isolation that I've left out for simplicity to be between 0 and 1 also. So we at least need to normalize there, and the distribution I'm starting to come to terms with its value.
Yeah, I'm not questioning the normalization. I'm questioning whether you need to worry once you normalize that the distribution is skewed, mm-hmm. or whether you take care of that. You know, the reason I heard earlier was, well, when we put all the data together into an index, some of these criteria get totally washed out by the others, mm-hmm. and I don't know why you can't take care of that by changing the weights.
Well, that's funny. That's what we did as kind of a crude workaround the first time. Mm-hmm. Jen, do you want to give her that story?
Yeah, I can. So when we initially did this, Matt Dietz, John, and I, sitting around my desk, we're looking for some solution. And the values have changed a little bit since then. But in that scenario, soil erosion's mean was 0.29, stream crossing's mean was 0.01, and this isolation index was a 0.55. So in this mean with zeros category. And so we did a little bit sort of back of the envelope math and came up with, in order to equally weight those, isolation stream crossings got 0.97 weight before we applied any sort of, received a 0.97 weight. Soil erosion received a 0.02 weight.